Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries has published legislation for public comment for the development of an effective climate change response. The bill calls the long-term just transition to a climate-resilient economy and society. It comes as South Africa battles severe and erratic weather conditions as seen in the recent KwaZulu-Natal floods. Joining us now to explain whether these laws would go far enough in addressing climate change is Brandon Abenour, climate advocacy lawyer at the Center for Environmental Rights. A very good afternoon to you. Climate change has been described as South Africa's ticking time bomb.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, I think that is quite accurate description. We saw what happened in KZN, and we've seen the science telling us year after year what we can expect. And for South Africa, that is droughts, floods, wildfires, pressure on food production, and a number of other issues that are really going to create huge and dangerous impacts for our people.
So how will this legislation now assist in this ticking time bomb, which, as we see, the ripple effect is quite detrimental, not just harming livelihoods, but exacerbating the recent environmental laws?
Exactly, and Paul. So the climate change bill intends to do that in three ways. The first one is it describes mitigation. So that is how we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions or carbon emissions in order to not continue heating the atmosphere and making the situation worse. Then secondly, it addresses climate adaptation. So that is adapting to those impacts that are going to happen regardless of how well we mitigate. And then the third leg is to describe the cooperative governance or the institutional arrangements in terms of putting together a climate response and maintaining that. So that very much brings in ministries other than the environmental ministry and also different levels of government. So provincial and local government are key. And again, we can see that from the Durban situation, it's municipalities that are on the front line of adapting to climate change, and they are the ones that are going to have to implement the measures to make sure that damage and death are avoided.
In implementing the measures comes huge challenges, of course, when it comes to, the actual implementation process, because the people of KwaZulu-Natal on the ground some of them have said that this has been, there have been many warnings, and it didn't have to become this extensive where lives have been lost and people are now having to piece their lives together.
Precisely. In order to mount a proper response in terms of adaptation, you need to map and assess the vulnerabilities and the risks, and they'll be different for different areas. So that's really quite a complex process of really understanding what is coming in terms of climate and the secondary impacts, and then what the infrastructure looks like, what the human settlements, water delivery systems, et cetera, look like, and making sure that those get adapted in accordance with what we expect to come. And that leads into one of our big concerns about the bill is the seeming lack of urgency. We had a climate change response white paper in 2011 already, which was supposed to lay out our response. We saw a draft bill come out in 2018 and then again at the end of last year and now open for public comment. Now, for example, municipalities in terms of the bill are only expected to provide their response plans a full 5 years after the act has come into place. So that could be 2027, 2028. And unfortunately, the changing climate and the impacts are not going to wait for us to be ready. We need to be ready urgently.
Absolutely. The bill calls for long-term just transition to a climate-resilient economy and society. What exactly would that look like?
Well, we need to reduce our greenhouse gases, and we need to do it urgently. The global figure for that is we need to reduce them by 45% by 2030. Now, the way we conduct our economy, for example, the way we generate our electricity, transport, grow food, etc., all contribute to those greenhouse gas emissions. So the just transition is how do we reduce those emissions at the pace required, but at the same time make sure that this transition to a low-carbon economy is fair. For example, we have about 90,000 workers in the coal value chain directly and others indirectly. it is not fair for those workers to bear the brunt of this transition. So we need to take steps, for example, reskilling them to work in the renewables energy capacity and many other aspects like that, which make sure that there's justice across how the benefits and the costs of such a transition are allocated.
Very well. Let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion. That was climate advocacy lawyer Brandon Abdennour speaking to the pressing ticking time bomb of climate change.